Sponsored by New Orleans Distillers, creators of fine spirits and liqueurs. Through dedication to science, art, and passion, blends of tradition and flavor emerge. For you, always locally crafted. New Orleans Distillers, classically Southern.
Tonight, the jobs report came out today, and since September, the U.S. economy added the fewest jobs of 2021. Don't mess with Tesla. Tesla is moving their headquarters from California to Texas. Get your cowboy boots ready, Elon. And the state of urban cities with the president of the National Urban League. That and more, all tonight on Wall Street Wrap-Up. Hi, welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up. I hope your week went well. I'm Andre Laborde. Our goal is bringing Wall Street to your street for today, for Friday, October the 8th, 2021, and to get you ready for the week ahead. You know, Will Rogers had a saying, no man's job is secure or property is safe when Congress is in session. Well, it's true today just as it was then. Tonight, we'll be discussing the Democrats' proposed $3.5 trillion spending or human infrastructure package, as well as illegal immigration across the southern border, and vaccine mandates, and a lot more. Because tonight, we'll be talking with Marc Morial. Marc is the president and CEO of the National Urban League and deals with these issues on a national level all the time. But many of you here know him as the former mayor of New Orleans for 8 years. And during that time, he was even president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We'll be talking with Marc in just a moment. But first, how did the markets do? Well, all the major averages closed higher for the week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended the week at 34,746. That was down 8 points for the day and down just over 1% for the week. And the S&P 500 closed today at 4,391, down 8 points for the day and down 0.75% for the week. And finally, the NASDAQ. They finished the week at 14,579, down 74 points for the day and basically flat for the week. Well, the energy and financials led the market, all but the indexes, but such as real estate, materials, and transportation, they were all down. And bank earnings will be looked at next week, and we'll have more of that because now that we're going into the fourth quarter, and we'll have a preview of that coming up later on. And this week, analyst at Jefferies has upgraded the fintech company Square to a strong buy with a new price target at $300 a share. And Credit Suisse has upgraded General Motors to a buy at $75 a share. And JP Morgan sees strong growth with supply chain disruptions and has upgraded Union Pacific Railroad to a new price target at $275 a share. Well, my guest this evening is Marc Morial. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Marc is the former mayor of New Orleans and now the president and CEO of the National Urban League, and someone, well, I've known since we were both 10 years old. Hi, Marc. Welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up.
Andre, it's so great to see you, and congratulations on the success of the show. And we've been buddies for a long time.
Yeah, we have.
And it's just real
and
great.
You haven't changed a bit.
To be with you.
That's it.
Neither have you.
Yeah, but thank God I've got makeup people here and camera angles, right? And I want to mention to everybody that we were talking before going on, at the National Urban League, it's T-shirt day, right? So you have, this is your first day back?
Forgive me for not having on a jacket and a tie.
No.
It was T-shirt day. All of our first day, everyone's back in the office in 18 months. Mm-hmm. And we said, let's make it fun. So wear T-shirt for your college, your graduate school, your high school, your favorite pro team, your fraternity, your sorority, or just any T-shirt you want to display. And I chose Georgetown University Law Center, where I got a law degree, and proud Hoya, and member of the Georgetown community.
How do you think about inflation today? Do you think I have a lot of economists and also business leaders on the show, and I always ask this question. Some say it's temporary, with just being a bottleneck, and some say, no, it's here for a good long time or to stay. What are your feelings?
You know, we have to watch it, and I'll tell you why, Andre. I saw a segment on television this morning about a about a bike shop. Can't remember the city.
Okay.
And the owner of the bike shop was interviewed, and he said, I sold out of all of my bikes during COVID, and I made an order way back in May, and none of the bikes have arrived. Of course, the bikes come from overseas. There are log jams in the supply chain that I think are impacting inflation. It's anyone's guess whether it's temporary or whether it's inflation or whether it's more permanent.
Do that, yeah.
Whether it's going to last for a longer period of time. I think that we all have to watch it. I think we have to be mindful of it. I think we have to monitor it because it's difficult to predict. I hope those economists who suggest that it's temporary are right and that it's not going to have a long-term negative impact. I mean, the economy can withstand some inflation. We've had very low inflation, 1%, 2%. I think over the last year it's been 5 to 5.5%, which I think is tending and trending on the high side. But I'm going to pull for the economists who forecast temporary. But it's anytime you prognosticate on something like this, it's extremely tricky.
The Democrats right now in the House and the Senate are trying to put a $3.5 trillion package together to be passed. Do you think that it will pass at $3.5 trillion, or do you think that in the era of compromise that it's going to have to go down some? Because even Bernie Sanders is telling the Democrats that if it goes under $3.5 trillion, don't vote for it, and he's telling that to the Democrats. What are your thoughts?
I think here's what's important, because we've kind of become almost overly focused on the top number. This is a multi-year budgetary blueprint. Why I think it's important, and there may be, and there should be always room for compromise without what I call radical surgery on a plan that's been carefully put together, is to focus on what's in the plan, what the plan does. And I think there's so much that the nation needs today that can only be addressed through significant investments in domestic programs, in American families, in jobs. You take the president's infrastructure plan and in infrastructure. So we have to repair the damage done by COVID. We have to also address long-standing, difficult issues that affect American families, that affect the American workforce. And I think this plan is focused on that.
There's a lot of Democrats, and including the administration, that is saying that this $3.5 trillion will be no cost because it's all being paid for. Do you really think that it's all being taken care of? It's all
I do think
be paid
that
for?
there's been more of an effort with this plan to offset the new spending with revenue enhancements that pay for it. It's important to make this comparison. For the Iraq, the Afghanistan wars, and the tax cut that the last administration promoted, there were no revenue offsets. In fact, I think in the previous administration, budgets went up on the spending side, primarily to invest in the military, and taxes were cut simultaneously. So I think that this plan and the president is trying to act responsibly, whether it's fully paid for or not. The point is that there's an effort to find revenue offsets. And that good faith, I think, is a contrast to what we've seen in the most immediate past. America is one of the few, or maybe the only Western nation that doesn't have a comprehensive paid family leave policy for people who are ill, people who are taking care of children or just birthed a child. Some of these are issues that are highly popular, much of this, with the American people, very popular with the American people, that have been delayed for many, many years because of politics. So I just believe that when the people voted in 2020, I think they voted to say it's time for a bold, imaginative far-reaching domestic agenda. And I think the 3.5, if you had to pare it back somewhat to achieve some votes, I would not be opposed to that if it didn't do radical surgery on the elements of the plan. But I also think that the two should pass, that they go together. The infrastructure, which is focusing on the physical infrastructure, the jobs and infrastructure plan, I should say, which focuses on the physical needs, roads, bridges, airports, broadband, electric grid, goes along with the budget plan, which enhances support for initiatives and programs that help human beings and people.
Do you think also in that plan, according to the president, he's saying that if you make under $400,000 a year, you will not pay one penny towards this $3.5 trillion plan? Do you believe that no one under $400,000 will come out of this as cost-free?
I take the president at his word, and I think the president has got to be clear on that, Andre, because if not, he suffers the fate of George W. Bush the first.
Right. And also it's showing
taxes pledge.
Everything from, they're talking about even raising cigarette taxes and with this plan. And normally I'm thinking about corporate taxes. Corporate taxes are passed down. There's two camps. There's one camp that says no, corporate taxes are paid by corporations and not to the people, and isn't passed down. There's the other camp that says corporate taxes are paid, but it's passed down through higher prices in the products that they sell. So
I tell you where I come down on this. I think we can have the argument about corporate taxes ad infinitum, but the unfairness in the system is the large number of American corporations that pay no taxes because of loopholes, exclusions, and deductions. And I'd like to see a much more concerted effort to eliminate corporate loopholes. I'd like to see a corporate minimum tax so that every company, regardless of size, pays some minimum tax. Through 2 summers, I spent working for the Louisiana legend Russell B. Long, who was chair of the Senate Finance Committee. And in those days, Long was masterful at moving tax legislation. And one of the ways he did it is by what he used to call his Christmas tree approach, that there was always a deduction or a loophole for every member's pet project in their district. And that's how he politically moved many of these tax bills.
Mark, you talked about Russell Long. Since you worked with him, I'm sure you remember Russell Long had a very famous saying, "Don't tax you and don't tax me, but tax that fella behind the tree."
Behind the tree.
That's exactly right.
That's what Russell said.
Mark, what about the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, has said that the southern border is secure. Do you think the southern border is secure from what we've seen so far?
I think we have a deep set of problems. Let me say for the record, the immigration system in the United States is not only broken, it's outdated. It was designed when the type of immigration that we had in this country was overwhelmingly European. It was not designed for the type of challenges that we have today. If secure means that the border, that there's a system or a process where people who come in who have legitimate claims for asylum can have those claims for asylum heard. Those that do not have legitimate claims for asylum are returned to the country of their choice, or returned to the country of origin, then that is a policy that for now, I think strikes the proper balance. Separating families and children is not a humanitarian policy. And we have a great deal of challenge and difficulty because many people want to come to this country, notwithstanding the deep problems we have. In some cases, they want to be reunited with their families. In some cases, they're fleeing political oppression. In some cases, they're fleeing deep and difficult economic hardships, and they want to be part of this country. And we ought to always have a rational, reasonable immigration policy because throughout history, whether it was in the 1800s or the early 1900s, where we had immigrants who came primarily from Ireland and Italy and came from places in Eastern Europe, we always had a policy to welcome immigrants to this country. We don't now have a system that is fair and balanced and fits the 21st century to regulate, if you will, or manage that process. And Congress has failed under Democratic and Republican administrations to accomplish the need for an upgrade of immigration laws that are now, in some instances, 35 years old.
Do you think, Mark, that those that are coming across the border right now should be granted citizenship?
I think they should have a path for asylum. Asylum may not give people immediate citizenship, but I do think that immigrants, particularly those who've been in this country for some time, even those who may be here without documentation, should have a reasonable path towards citizenship if they've been living, if they've been contributing to what's best in this country.
You're just joining us. We're very happy to have the president and the CEO of the National Urban League. You might have heard of him, Marc Morial. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. And we're back. We're glad to have Marc Morial, the president and CEO of the National Urban League, talking about a number of issues and things that are going on around the United States. The Wall Street Journal, I remember a couple of weeks ago, had a story on there's a lot of, and because you're with the National Urban League, it caught my interest because the Wall Street Journal said that there are a lot of people that are leaving urban areas to move to the suburbs. And the two biggest reasons, according to the article that I read, was high crime and also higher taxes. And in addition to that, I mean, the latest census came out, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think New York, the state of New York, lost 2 representatives, and California, for the first time in their 150-year history, lost a representative, where Florida and Texas have picked up a representative. What do you see the future for urban areas?
I think urban areas are vibrant and strong, but there's always a pendulum. I think less than high taxes. I believe it's high housing costs that have been fueled by a return to the cities, gentrification of the cities that have caused housing prices in places like New Orleans, places like Washington, D.C., places like New York. The housing prices have spiked, and people move by and large, because they cannot afford the housing prices. There are more African Americans now in this country who live in suburbs, what are defined as suburbs, than there are African Americans who live in cities. Mm-hmm. You think about southeastern Louisiana, New Orleans has lost population. The black percentage of New Orleans has declined. But the black percentage of Jefferson Parish and many of the river parishes and St. Tammany parishes has ticked upwards. So this move is always offset. I have many friends who moved to places like Gonzales, Laplace, places in St. Charles Parish, or Baton Rouge, because it was less expensive to buy or rent there than it was to buy or rent in New Orleans.
True. Mm-hmm.
So the factors used to be that the suburbs, housing in the suburbs was far more expensive than housing in the city. We've seen a beginning of a reversal of that trend. And many suburbs now are older. They have an aging population. They have deteriorating infrastructure. Many of our old suburbs, I would submit to you, are more like cities today than they are suburbs.
Mark, what about, you've been the mayor of a city. Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City. LaToya Cantrell, the mayor of New Orleans. London Breed, who's the mayor of San Francisco. And there are other cities besides those three that I mentioned, are saying that without a vaccination card, you're not able to attend bars, go into restaurants, cultural events, and such. Do you agree with that, or do you think that it's misplaced?
I tell you why I support it now that the vaccine has been green lit by the government. Because if you did need to have a vaccination card, the majority of the people who are vaccinated, many of them may not go for fear of their own health. So I think these limitations. Look, here in New York, I carry my vaccination card wherever I go. I've gone into restaurants, hotels. I went to a huge concert at Central Park to show my vaccination card not once, but twice. And the second time I had to show it along with my identification card. Here at the National Urban League, we have a mandatory vaccination policy. I may lose 3 or 4 employees who decide that they don't want to adhere to the policy. I understand that, and we didn't confect the policy with any other impression but we have 90+% adherence to the vaccination rule. In the United States, I can't tell you what the number is, but it's too many people who have died. This is not, I just get a little cold and then I'm over it. This is people dying from this wicked. So if we have a tool, almost every American today was vaccinated for polio, vaccinated for smallpox, vaccinated for measles, mumps, and rubella. We virtually eliminated polio and smallpox. How did we do it? Through vaccinations.
Mark, the last survey I saw was about a week ago, week and a half. So things might have changed in the last 7 days or so. But I know in the New York area, approximately 38% of African Americans have been vaccinated. That's about 60% or so that have not been vaccinated. Is because of the splintering lately of this country, do you think, I mean, you've got employees, restaurant employees, let's say, or bar employees that are standing there going, you can come in, but you can't come in. Do you think that's going to be, that there's going to be a problem later down the road if it hasn't happened already?
It's not, look, we are in an environment and a situation now that's not comfortable, period. Mm-hmm. No one likes the idea of requiring a vaccination card. I certainly don't. I don't like it. But it's not what I like. It's what's required to keep people safe and healthy. And I think we have to be guided by that. Andre had COVID. My wife had COVID.
I'm sorry to hear that.
At the beginning of the cycle. Mm-hmm. And I'm transparent about it because my wife was very sick. She didn't have to go to the hospital. I was less under the weather. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't fun. Mm-hmm. It was scary. And we overcame it. We went on. When the vaccination was available, we went together and got it. I just say to people, don't play with this. There are too many people, respectfully today, who, while on their deathbed, say, I wish I'd gotten this vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Mark, how do you think in the 2022 midterms are coming up, how do you think the Democrats are going to do, or what type of direction do you think the voters are going to be voting on?
I think we're going to have one battle over control of the Congress in 2022. Honestly, I'll say this in my personal capacity because the National Urban League is a nonpartisan organization, but in my personal capacity, I think it's in the best interest of the country for the Democrats to maintain control. And I believe it because of this. I think the Republicans had an opportunity to, for the most part, govern the country. They had a long run of presidents in congressional control. Most of the last 40 years, they either had control of the Congress or control of the White House and got an opportunity to put their imprimatur on a lot of public policy. I think now the Democrats deserve an opportunity to have a run to put their imprimatur on public policy, to see if a different approach, a different way, a different philosophy does better for the country. As a community leader in New Orleans told me many, many years ago, he says, you got to put some of the jam on the lower shelf. If the jam is not on the lower shelf, we can't reach it, Mr. Mayor. Andre, it's just great to be with you tonight. Appreciate you, congratulate you, and look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon. We'll be back.
Thanks a lot, Marc. The former mayor of New Orleans and president of the National Urban League, Marc Morial. Thanks so much. Well, if you've got a question about finance or a comment about the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can always write us at andre@wallstreetwrapup.info. Keep it pithy or concise. We'll be glad to answer your questions. And now for a look ahead for next week. But first, in 1896, what financial index started a continuous daily publication of selected stocks? What was it? Well, we'll have that answer in just a moment. Well, on this day in 1896, what financial index started a continuous daily publication of selected stocks? The answer is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It started with 12 members, 12 stocks. The last original member of the Dow Jones, which originally came in at the very beginning, was General Electric, which was just dropped in 2018. The Dow Jones, 125 years old today. Well, next week, we've got some great guests coming up, by the way. And next week, we're going to have the editor-in-chief of Forbes magazine, Mr. Steve Forbes. From his financial columns in Forbes magazine to his presidential run just a few years ago, Steve has always made his opinions known, and we'll be talking about the spending bills in Congress, the debt ceiling, microchip shortages, and supply chain disruptions, and a whole lot more. So much to discuss with Steve Forbes, the editor-in-chief of Forbes magazine, next week, as a reminder. And speaking of reminders, we repeat the show on Sunday mornings, but the best way is to always set your DVR so you'll never miss an episode. And that's our show for Friday, October the 8th, 2021. And I hope you've enjoyed it. My thanks again to Marc Morial for joining us this evening. But as always, my special thanks is to you for allowing us into your homes tonight. Remember, you can always follow us on Facebook and YouTube, Twitter, and WYES.org. And we might even get onto Tinder so you can swipe me either to the right or to the left. Not really sure which one is the best, but all the social medias. May you have a fun weekend and a productive week ahead. I'll see you next week. For Wall Street Wrap Up, I'm Andre Laborde. Remember, money never sleeps. Good night.
Sponsored by New Orleans Distillers, creators of fine spirits and liqueurs. Through dedication to science, art, and passion, blends of tradition and flavor emerge. For you, always locally crafted. New Orleans Distillers, classically Southern.